What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard production. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera here with you, waiting for Vish Kumaran to hop in on the broadcast. He's just finishing up a work meeting, but wanted to get things rolling here before he hopped in. I know a lot of people have been waiting, so I figured we'd start it up now and we'll go. Three big topics we want to get to on today's show. First, Jalen Hurts just got the bag for the Eagles. Is it possible that Trey Lance could develop exactly the way Jalen Hurts has for the Eagles? I had a tweet this morning that compared their rookie years, and they are remarkably similar. So we'll get to that. We'll get to the report that Adam Peters could be leaving after the draft. There was an update on that today coming out of Houston and their GM, Nick Caserio. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about this weird quote going on with Brock Purdy about how he might have said he's not sure if he's going to play in 2023, but he didn't really say that. But Yahoo kind of made it look like he said that. Really weird stuff going on with Brock. So we're going to get to all of that. First, we'll start with the Jalen Hurts stuff. And when Vish pops in, we'll probably rehash this so we can get his take on it as well. Jalen Hurts got the bag from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's making a ton of money. He's the highest paid player in NFL history, 5-year, $255 million contract extension, $179 million in guarantees, and he gets a no trade clause, which is the first no trade clause that I think the Eagles have ever given out. So shout out to him. Shout out to his agent. It's a great day to be an Eagles fan. It's a great day to be a Jalen Hurts fan. And of course, it's a great day to be Jalen Hurts. So my question is, can Trey Lance develop like Jalen Hurts has developed? Because remember, the Jalen Hurts we saw last year is not the Jalen Hurts we saw his rookie season. And so I started combing through the numbers when this went down, and I started comparing and just to see like how close are these guys? Because I think in the 49ers' mind, they wanted to run the kind of offense that the Eagles have in a lot of ways. So I went back and looked, and I tweeted it out this morning, and it's got a lot of reaction. If you're watching on YouTube right now or Twitch, at Stats on Fire on Twitch, shout out to everybody watching there, you'll see the comparison. Let me get rid of that topic bar. There we go. So if you're watching, Jalen Hurts rookie year, he played 15 games. He had 4 starts. He was 52% completions. Trey Lance has played 8 games so far in his career, 4 starts. Trey Lance is at almost 55% completions. Jalen Hurts threw for 70.7 yards per game his rookie year. Trey Lance has thrown for 99 yards per game. Jalen Hurts, 77.6 quarterback rating. Trey Lance, 84.5 quarterback rating. Jalen Hurts had 9 total touchdowns, 4 picks, and 9 fumbles his rookie year and ran for 5.6 yards per carry. Trey Lance, 6 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions, just 1 fumble, at 4.4 yards per carry. So the numbers obviously are close. What I wrote in the tweet was the Eagles let Hurts play. The 49ers should too. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that the 49ers need to let Trey play. Even with Brock there, I don't care about that. Jalen Hurts to me is an example of a guy who had a rough start. He absolutely did. And then you know what? He got more experience. He got more time in the system. Admittedly, the team got better around Jalen Hurts, and the Niners already have a good team. But clearly, Jalen developed into a quarterback who's now the highest paid player in NFL history. So the Eagles were rewarded for letting him play. And I think the 49ers need to do the same thing with Trey Lance to find out what they have. Because if you have a quarterback that can do what Jalen Hurts did, you want to lock that guy up. Let's see if I can go to some of the comments here. I know a lot of people are chiming in on the chat. We got people watching from all over the place. Shout out to everybody. Mark Harrison, I see you watching on YouTube. Sign Me Too, watching on Twitch. Loyal follower on Twitch. I appreciate you. Sign Me Too. The team has to actually invest in Trey to make that happen. Yeah, well, that's a separate issue. But this is why I'm so disturbed about hearing, oh, Sam Darnold might, he's going to get some of the reps with Trey Lance, because I don't want to do that. You're taking away, you're slowing the development, right? The Eagles put Jalen in there and they let him drive the bus. And yeah, they struggled a little bit. Yes, they did. And now they've just made him the highest paid player in NFL history. And I think that there's no reason to believe that Trey Lance cannot develop the same way Jalen Hurts did. 9 fumbles for Jalen Hurts' his rookie year. That's crazy. And only 4 starts. That's a lot of freaking fumbles. But That was the first thing that jumped out to me with the news that Jalen Hurts just got the bag. So I don't know if you guys feel the same. Anyone watching feels the same. I do. I think it's pretty obvious that the 49ers need to do this. I don't know that they're going to do this. 49ers offseason workout program begins today. So a lot of people are going to be back in the facility. Most of the team, it is voluntary at this point, but I think most of the team is going to be there. Nick Bosa won't because he's Nick Bosa and he can do whatever the hell he wants. But I saw something else that actually jumped out to me. And it was an article from, I want to say Barrows and Lombardi. And it said, Brock Purdy is going to be present to start the 49ers offseason workout program. That's a good sign for how his rehab is going. And I thought that was sort of a strange leap to make, but okay, fine. It's certainly not a bad sign. But my question was, why aren't we bringing that same energy for Trey Lance? Why aren't we saying Trey Lance is going to be there? Hey, it's a good sign for his rehab coming back from injury. So I thought that was a little weird. Now, maybe if you want to say it's just because the Niners consider Purdy the starter, and so that's why they went there, okay. But I just thought that was a little strange. Like, have the same energy for both of these people. Kyle Shanahan himself has even said, hey, Trey Lance could regain the starting job if he comes out and plays well. And he's also said that they think that Trey can play just as well as Brock played last year. So that will be interesting. Let's see. Jan watching on YouTube, Purdy not letting Sam and Trey steal his thunder in the locker room. I do think that's part of this. I do. I think that everybody's aware of everything going on. They're aware of the locker room component, right? So Trey, when he thought he was going to be the starter in 2021, you noticed that offseason, he really started coming out of his shell, being a leader, promoting other guys on social media, shouting them out, trying to be more of like a team guy. He wasn't like that his rookie year, but he was like that in 2022 when he thought he was going to be the starter. Even when Trey got hurt, he was immediately back in the building. The second he could get back in the building, he was there because I think he was trying to manage that locker room situation. And I think that Brock's aware of it too. Brock's talked about, how he wanted to portray confidence and project confidence once he got in there so the team didn't think the season was over. He's aware of how he's seen in the locker room, and he's aware of how what he does rubs off and affects everybody in the locker room. So I do think that's part of this. Looks like Vish is here. Let's see if I could pop him in. Vish, what's up?
What's up, Rob? Look at that. Look at the title of the show after what we promised all our loyal viewers last week.
I know. I didn't bring that up. We did promise a quarterback-free show, but don't blame us. Blame the Eagles for making Jalen Hurts the highest-paid quarterback or highest-paid player in NFL history.
Yeah, I got to say, this is the second show we're doing today because we did knock out a beauty, if I must say so myself, on the phone earlier. But I actually cannot blame the Eagles or Jalen Hurts. I have to blame one Rob Stats Guerrera. When I called them this morning around 10 a.m. Central, he immediately said he was looking at Jalen Hurts' numbers through his rookie year, and he was comparing them to the limited time we've seen Trey Lance playing. So as much as Rob would like to put this on the Eagles and put this on Jalen Hurts, the reason we're talking about quarterbacks today, there's only one person to blame, and that's one Rob Stats Guerrera. Not Vish Kumaran, not the Eagles, not Jalen Hurts, Rob Stats Guerrera. What do you think, Rob?
Hey, if you want to put this on me, feel free. But when Jalen Hurts gets the bag, and let's be honest, Vish, I think the 49ers would like to run an offense similar to how the Eagles run it and then see Trey Lance develop into the kind of player that Jalen Hurts is now. Yeah, it jumps out to me.
Yeah, I hate this comparison. Just because we're getting into draft time right now, and I looked over the quarterbacks, and I get to look at my previous evaluations of some of these players, usually how wrong they were, and see if I can learn from them. But the evaluation of Jalen Hurts coming out of college and the evaluation of Trey Lance coming out of college weren't in the same stratosphere. Like, I don't think Shanahan would have ever drafted Jalen Hurts for the quarterback he was coming out of college. Like, I would put money on that because the most similar quarterback to Jalen Hurts probably right now in the NFL is the one in Chicago. And that was the one guy of the five that Shanahan clearly didn't want. And so if we're judging them and we're saying, well, Trey Lance needs to take the Jalen Hurts trajectory, that's kind of scary to me. Like, how do we get to the Jalen Hurts trajectory? Because when coming out of college, whatever you want to say about Jalen Hurts versus Trey Lance, and I know Jalen Hurts has a ton of experience, and Jalen Hurts' football character is something we've seen on display over and over again. I mean, the toughness to take the embarrassment of getting benched in the national championship game the year after he won them the national championship in the second half, and then resurrecting his career, going to Oklahoma, going through what he went through the first 2 years in Philadelphia. Nobody believed in him, and taking the steps he did. There's something special about Jalen Hurts, the human being. And perhaps the same thing exists with Trey Lance. We don't know. But in terms of who they were coming out of college, Rob, in terms of how unrefined Hurts was as a passer, in terms of how unrefined he was playing from the pocket versus Trey Lance, who played in a pro-style system, who showed the ability to play within the system, who showed, moments of higher level processing that you see. That's why he was the third pick in the draft. I think now talking Jalen Hurts development track with him puts us far and away from what we were originally expecting. And to me, that's scary because Hurts' leap is monumental. It's unprecedented. The guy went from Tebow his freshman year in college to now he's a top 6, 7, 8 quarterback in the NFL. He threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So it's an unheard of growth.
Is it that unheard of though? I mean, like they had him, they drafted him, they let him play, and then they improved the roster around him. Like, isn't that what's supposed to happen? Is it really that unprecedented? I don't know. We've kind of said that with Josh Allen too in Buffalo. No one's ever made a leap like Josh Allen's made a leap.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, turns out if you get stability around somebody, keep him in the same system, improve the roster around him, as long as you haven't drafted a stiff, they should get better.
But I think the big difference between those two guys and Lance, and okay, Lance's injuries aside, right? We're talking about a guy who's had 4 starts. It's really tough to know what he does or doesn't do well. But what we can take is the little inklings that are reported by people who are plugged into the 49ers, the Mike Silvers, the Albert Breers, the Matt Barrows, the David Lombardis, all these guys who cover the team, Tim Kawakami. And they've all said consistently that the Niners have been disappointed. That's the word that they've used, disappointed with his running. And they say they're surprised by his speed, all of that. The one thing the other two guys had was that their running gave them a chance to compete early in their career. And I think that was the expectation with Trey Lance too. But when you hear, I'm not personally hearing, but when you read people saying that the Niners are disappointed with his running, I question if they feel like his running will give him the same chance that Jalen Hurts running gave him in the early parts of his career. Same with Josh Allen. I mean, Jalen Hurts has scored 25 red zone touchdowns running in the last 2 years, 12 the year before, 13 this year. This is off the top of my head, so you can fact check me. But that's unheard of production. When you have a guy that goes into the red zone and is basically an automatic touchdown run, it's unheard of production. So I do probably an aspect of all of this, but I just hate the comparison just because I'm so dug into draft time right now. And it's like I thought so much higher of Trey Lance than I did of Jalen Hurts coming out of college. I was totally wrong about Jalen Hurts. Don't get me wrong. I was totally wrong about Jalen Hurts. But it's hard then to think that we're taking a guy who was so much further along than the other guy, and now we're saying stick him on the other guy's development track. That just doesn't sit right for me personally, because it doesn't make sense from where our mindset was about Trey Lance. So just, a short time ago.
Well, whether you think that Hurts had further to go than Lance or not, I mean, it's clear now that Jalen Hurts has improved as he's gotten experience and gotten time in the league. And that's my point in asking the question. Can Trey Lance do the same? Even if you think that he's starting further ahead in the race, the point is, do we see that improvement? And I don't think that there's any reason why we shouldn't. Shanahan and Lynch have both said we thought that Trey could have just as good a year as Brock had. He thought they could do exactly the same thing. So, okay, let's see it then. That was my first thought with the whole Trey Lance, Jalen Hurts contract today. That's what jumped in my head. By the way, just keep an eye out. I think you're bumping something with your leg or something's hitting your microphone. It's driving me crazy.
It can't be this time, because this time I'm holding on to both of my legs to make sure they don't shake during the show. I did see your text message though.
Okay, don't touch. Something's driving me crazy.
I think it might be my mic. My mic stand naturally just keeps tending to move a little bit.
That's what it is. That's
Look at that.
yeah, you're driving me nuts. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, all right, let's get
sorry,
to
Rob.
that's okay. Let's get to a couple of comments. Shout out, thank you, for official BNA Music for the super chat. I wonder if coaches, teammates, and fans who've pushed the Brock QB1 narrative have thought about how the injury may have affected his mental. That's absolutely a thing that needs to be talked about. Brock Purdy drops back to pass. There's a pass rusher bearing down on him. He could either try and get the ball off and stay in there and take a hit, or he could try and scramble and use his legs. If you don't think that that's going to be in his head when he drops back against real pass rushers, I think you're crazy. The mental side of this injury, Vish, is something that has not gotten as much coverage as I think it deserves.
Yeah, I think the only people that are covering it is you and I.
Pretty much.
We've talked about it. We've done that topic just about every show, and then we keep telling our loyal viewership that we're not going to talk about quarterbacks after we spend 35 minutes analyzing Trey Lance and then 20 minutes talking about, hey, we love Brock Purdy, but this seems a little bit unfair, the expectations on him given the serious nature of the injury. Like, we're talking about him returning. And 49ers fans, I point you back to the 2019 offseason. Jimmy Garoppolo had a lot of issues coming back from his ACL injury. He was crappy in that training camp. Does anybody remember that Monday night preseason game at Denver?
Oh, God.
One of the worst preseason games you can ever remember a starting quarterback has played, right?
Yeah, it was really, really bad.
And he was terrible. Then the start against Kansas City was terrible. It was terrible. Then they removed the starters in that third preseason game. And he threw a drift stock. I think he threw a little rail route to Richie James for a big gain. The same touchdown he to Richie James against Tampa Bay. But it was really, really rough. And it took Jimmy a little bit of while to get his rhythm back. That 7-0, but Jimmy Garoppolo was terrible for the first 7 games. He played very well in the second half of that season, but he was terrible for the first 7 games. So there is this idea that, there's something with the injury return for quarterbacks. I would say that exists for Trey Lance too. We don't know. He's got to get better too. So I think that exists across the board.
But at least with Trey, his injury is not on his throwing arm. That's the only difference. By the way, Garoppolo in that preseason game, quarterback rating of 0.0. He was 1 of 6 for 0 yards and an interception on 3 drives. And he had another incompletion that was almost picked off for a second interception. The defender dropped it. So that's how bad it was for Jimmy. Yeah. And I think that, this is going to be a thing for sure. When it comes to Brock, let's get to this other weirdness that happened Friday and kind of over the weekend. So Brock was doing interviews for Buffalo Wild Wings. He's got a partnership with them. He's going to be doing some stuff at the draft with Buffalo Wild Wings. And he gave a lot of interviews, and Yahoo Sports wrote up a quote from him that when I first read it, I was like, holy crap, is he saying he's going to be out for the year? And then the more I read it and the more I thought about it, I kind of put the blame on Yahoo more than anything else. I'm going to put it up on the screen for people watching so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's see here. There we go. So the way Yahoo writes it up, Purdy saying Friday he's, quote, not really sure, honestly, end quote, whether he'll play in 2023 as he takes it, quote, one day at a time, end quote. So they don't have a quote, Vish, from Brock that says, I'm not sure if I'm going to play in 2023. Usually when they split it up like this, what happens is they don't have the quote directly, but through the context of everything, that's the thought that is implied. But with something this big, with a potential news story of Brock saying, I don't know if I'm going to be back, you can't do it this way because it's too ambiguous. Are you on my side on that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. This is some elite. I'm only, 8 years removed from high school. So this is some elite AP English quote embedding into your sentence structure, because they make it sound like Brock Purdy says that. But I think the real context of the quote is simply that Brock Purdy is not looking that far ahead right now. He's just taking this injury one day at a time, and then he'll realize and handle that moment when it gets there. He's not thinking ahead to that. He's not worried about that. He's just doing what he can to get better every individual day he can, which is the correct mindset to have. So I completely agree with you on that quote, 100%.
Yeah, I thought it was just really weird. Like, you can't have anybody be unsure of that, because that would be the freaking story. That would have been the story of the week. And plus, it came out on Friday, so people were like, "Was this a Friday bad news dump?"
No,
And
no.
it would have been really bad form if you had John Lynch say he might be back in training camp, then Kyle Shanahan say he might not be back till week 4, and then Brock Purdy say I might not play at all in 2023. But that is not what we think is going on here.
No.
If you read the rest of the story too in Yahoo, it talks about how everybody's on the same page with the rest and the rehab and the recovery, and that things are seemingly going well. So when you combine all that together and the fact that nobody on the 49ers beat ever mentioned this, tweeted anything about it, gave any whiff of that, all those things combined make me think this is just a bad job by Yahoo.
I agree. I agree. I agree. By the way, Rob, in our last topic about Lance, and the Purdy injury, you know how you brought up the big distinction between them being that Lance broke his leg and Purdy had an injury to his throwing arm. It's very interesting that you bring that up because I was listening to Mike Silver on the Volume a couple days ago with Colin Cowherd, and they were talking about this exact topic, and they were patting themselves on the back for, reporting that they had been getting right for over the course of the year. But Mike Silver said at the time, he said that if Brock Purdy had injured anything besides his throwing arm, like even if he broke his leg against Philadelphia, there wouldn't be the same worry. Like Trey Lance, and they were talking about basically the Trey Lance trade conversation because we know that, Cowherd loves Sam Darnold. And so he was thinking it was possibly an opportunity for his boy to come back. But they were talking about the Trey Lance trade scenario, and that was basically what Silver said. He said if Purdy had broken his leg, yeah, Lance could have been gone. Like he probably was gone. Like they were probably going to go with Purdy. But now, because that injury is to the throwing arm, the lack of certainty surrounding what he comes back as, when he comes back, and all of that has changed everything. But I think it's very interesting that Mike Silver would say something like that he believes, things could have been over with Trey Lance in San Francisco. Or he didn't say exactly that, but that was what he implied, basically. And it wasn't just because Purdy got injured. It was because he got injured to his throwing arm in particular. If it was a leg injury, yeah, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's very clear at this point that they're all in on Brock, that they think Brock is the guy, which is weird to me because Kyle says at the owner meeting, well, Trey Lance could regain the starting job if he plays well. And it's like, then how in on Brock are you? Like if you're going to be willing to potentially.
But then they asked him that, right? They asked him that. They said, how is he going to do it if he doesn't play? Well, it would be really difficult. So like he's basically saying like he could, but that's also like him saying, I don't know if anybody's going to be alive the next day, or we could trade anybody. It's just him saying that nothing's out of the realm of possibility.
Nick Eller on YouTube says, Vish paraphrasing Mike Silver's conversation makes me think he wrote the Yahoo Sports story on Purdy. That's mean,
tough.
but it's
That's
funny.
Tough,
so
Nick.
I support it. No, I did hear that, Mike. So I actually pulled the audio of that because I'm probably going to put it into 49ers in 5 this week. Yeah, see, I hear everything. Don't worry about that.
Stats. You must be relying on the same sources of watching your 49ers knowledge as me. I usually rely on 49ers in 5, but I guess I've gone above relying on 49ers.
How dare you? Everyone should listen to 49ers in 5. I keep an eye on everything for you so you don't have to. That's the point of 49ers in 5. Let's get to another sort of weird thing that popped up. And Mike Silver's right in the middle of this one too. And that is the rumor that Nick Caserio, the Texans GM, could be leaving the team after the draft and going back to the Patriots where he came from. And then Mike Silver jumped in off the top rope and said, the other part of this rumor is not just that Caserio will leave, it's that Adam Peters would be a top candidate to replace Caserio in Houston. That's juicy. There's all sorts of 49ers ties there, right? Of course, D'Amico Ryans is there. Bobby Sloak is there. They come from San Francisco. Houston has extra picks because of the Deshaun Watson trade. Right. So there's some juicy things there. Now, I will say, since even just before we hit record, there was an update. Nick Caserio said, wow, I can't believe that, this is even brought up. We haven't had any substantial conversations about that. Blah, blah, blah. Vish, we're less than 2 weeks before the draft. Are you buying what Nick Caserio's selling?
Yeah, because that's the only thing he can sell right now, and it doesn't make sense for me for a GM to run the entire draft and free agency and then leave that team. Like, that's a very weird thought process there, let alone the fact I don't know what the hell Nick Caserio has been doing in Houston. Every year they sign every free agent to 1 year contracts. They shift their quarterback problem down the road. They've already fixed their salary cap. They've, come back to with recouping all the draft value that they lost with Laramie Tunsil and DeAndre Hopkins and all the stupid BS that Bill O'Brien was pulling off as their GM, thanks to one Deshaun Watson. So they've been able to recoup that. Their cap situation is status quo. But he's just been going on this 1 year run of players that are all signed to 1 year contracts. In fact, he did it again this offseason, which I was surprised by because they gave D'Amico Ryans the 6 year commitment that they didn't give David Culley or Lovie Smith. So it seems like D'Amico Ryans wouldn't get the same axe that they got after a year, but then they signed everybody to 1 year deals again. I don't exactly know what the hell they're doing, but it would make no sense, especially for a team that's seemingly has a good chance to draft a quarterback. Why would you let a GM be in charge of the draft that you draft your quarterback and then he walks away to New England? That feels weird to me. Of course, this is only really interesting to us because of the Adam Peters angle of it all. And
Yes.
I'm sure that that's what you really want to discuss here.
Of course. Nick Caserio said, quote, quite frankly, I'm almost embarrassed. I have to. I feel sort of like Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. There's never really been any substantive discussions of the sort. So he's shooting it down. I've also seen guys say, I'm not going to be the Alabama head coach, and then end up being the Alabama head coach. It would be weird to have him run the draft and then leave, especially for another team in the AFC. Phil Jackson once ran the Knicks draft and then left immediately after that. So it is a thing that has happened in professional sports. Let's just look at the Peters side of this. How big of a loss would it be if Adam Peters did leave? I don't know for sure. I can't say. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the correct answer. Yeah, I think most people want uproar. Adam Peters is this, Adam Peters is that. The only thing I've really understood about Adam Peters in the 6 years that he's been here is that for whatever reason, any good pick by the 49ers gets credited to him, and then every bad pick just gets blamed on somebody else. And I think that entire thing is weird because if there's one consistent messaging that we've gotten from the 49ers over the last 7 years, and the reason they hired the GM the way they did is because the coaches are the ones that really have the biggest say in who they draft and the evaluation process and all of that. They always talk about how collaborative it is. But remember that Matt Miller report from that begrudged scout who had left the 49ers because he felt like the coaches were getting too much control and the scouts weren't having enough of a say. So I think that's the only thing we've gotten. Now, John Lynch has publicly said that one pick was pushed for by Adam Peters, and that was Ambry Thomas, who is a bust. I think the draft is a little bit of a crapshoot in general. So I'm not saying he's a good drafter. He isn't. I'm just putting into perspective that the good picks aren't necessarily just attributed to him. The bad ones are there too. And then the other one is the week before the draft, right? The big bombshell report that went under the radar was Chris Sims said the giant rumor around the league when everybody thought the pick was going to be Mac Jones was that Adam Peters was smitten with Trey Lance. And so there's the other player that we've heard that he's connected to, right? We know that he had some say in George Kittle and Fred Warner and these guys, but then we also know that John Embry loved George Kittle, and that was part of the reason why they drafted him too. So looking details with all of this, I think the Niners organization is run well, and the process is because Shanahan does his job. I think like he's the one who really sets the tone. I think losing Adam Peters would be like the Patriots losing Caserio. He's probably invaluable to them in the job that he does, but I'm assuming that he fits a specific role in what they ask him to do that suits his skill set, and they like him there. I don't know. I think sometimes we give him too much credit and we take away credit from other people. When I look at the 49ers, and I've always looked at it this way, the guy that has the bulk of the say in every decision is Shanahan.
Kyle.
And I feel like attributing most of those decisions to him rather than giving Peters the good decisions, giving Shanahan some of the bad ones, and then sticking the rest of the bad ones on Lynch, particularly Solomon Thomas, just because the guy happened to take one class with him in college.
Yeah, we tend to do that, right? We assign one guy gets all the credit for a pick. That's usually not how it works in any organization, particularly the 49ers, who do appear to be a very collaborative thing. It's, hey, this guy kind of likes him. This person likes him. This scout likes him. What does his position coach think? What does Kyle think? And yeah, Kyle has the ultimate final say, I believe, but it's not fair, like you said, to say, this is a Peters pick, this is a Lynch pick, this is a Shanahan pick. It doesn't work like that. If only one guy likes him and everybody else hates him, there's only one person that could make that pick, and that would be Kyle Shanahan. Other than that, that's just not how it's going to work for the 49ers. So I agree with you. I wouldn't know what to think if Adam Peters came and went or whatever. It was interesting to me, though, because there was that rumor, and then there was also the rumor that Parag Marathe could or will be the primary owner of Leeds United when the 49ers complete that deal to buy that team. So then is Parag going to also, leave the 49ers? And then you could potentially have Adam Peters leave and Parag Marathe leave. And all of a sudden, this whole little brain trust that the 49ers have would look a little different.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that would be pretty interesting. You and I talked about this on the phone a lot. And the one point I didn't make to you on the phone that I think is really interesting is that Parag has kind of been Jed's one long-standing sounding board through his entire process of owning the 49ers. Through the ups and downs, the only guy that survived and been Jed York's right-hand man throughout it all is Parag. And I think that from a cap standpoint, what he was doing at the time in 2008 and 2009, especially because the Niners weren't exceptionally great at managing the cap when you look at their history with like Terry Donahue, even in 94, when they signed all those players when the cap first started, they couldn't retain everybody because they signed everybody to the max. And like, that's where Parag has been good, right? Because rarely you see the Niners cutting players because they have a salary cap issue or trading players for less than they're worth. Jalen Ramsey because they have a salary cap issue. They don't do stuff like that because Parag has the whole thing organized and he has the whole thing planned out. I think that role is probably a little less valuable in 2022 or 2023 than it was in 2007 because I think every team has a Parag Marathe today. I think every team manages the cap. I mean, look at the Saints, dude. I don't know what the Saints have done, but it's 4 straight years that they have pulled, a shamrock out of their ass to, as Mike Florio would say, to save their cap situation. So they've done something to do that. So I think that, ultimately it's hard, right? Because we don't know exactly what they do. We think they do a certain job. We don't know what intangible value they provide. But I really think that ultimately, again, for me, if they have Shanahan, things probably operate similarly within this organization, no matter what.
That is the stability you get when you have a coach like Kyle Shanahan, is that things can change around them, but because their just sort of overarching presence is so big, you can maintain stability, whereas other organizations can't do that. And whereas the 49ers couldn't do that for a long time. I mean, anyone that's old enough to remember Alex Smith's career, I think the guy had like 18 offensive coordinators in his first 3 seasons.
7 years.
Yeah, it was like absurd. A lot of people have hopped in lately, so I just want to reiterate, since the title of this video is about Jalen Hurts and Trey Lance, Jalen Hurts got the bag from the Philadelphia Eagles. The question I asked was, can Trey Lance develop similarly? And I want to point out 2 things. One, it was a great point that I saw on Twitter, and it wasn't made by me. It was from @Terry Franconia, who wrote, the Eagles have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Dallas Goedert, Darius Slay, yada, 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 all under contract through 2025 or later. Even with this now giant quarterback contract, Vish, the highest paid player in NFL history on their salary cap, the Eagles still have those players under contract. I know the 49ers have constantly talked about having a cheap quarterback room, but let's not act like you can't also have a good team with a good quarterback.
Though, right? They want a cheap quarterback room because they haven't found their quarterback. If Trey Lance goes out and balls out next year, or Brock Purdy goes out and balls out next year, do you think when the time comes they're not going to pay them?
Right. I agree. They absolutely will, and they've shown that they will.
So, and I think it's interesting. And, we were talking about the development track, right? And I think the one thing I didn't mention when we did talk about that, Rob, is I think he's capable of taking a jump. My point is that I don't think he needs to take the same jump as Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's as raw as Jalen Hurts was. That's basically my point. So I think when we're talking about taking the Jalen Hurts jump, it feels a little foreign to me because I think there was a bigger jump for Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts had played a lot more than Trey Lance, but in what they have played, Trey Lance was way more refined, way more polished coming out of college than Jalen Hurts. That's just a fact. Go watch them play in college.
I'm on board with that, but I just want to see the progression. I want to see him get a chance to progress. Like he said with Rich Eisen, right? I just want a chance to compete. That's what Trey Lance told Rich Eisen. And I
Yeah,
hope we get to
100%.
see it. MGM Productions.
He's handled it so well, hasn't he? Every time he's put in front of a mic, it's incredible. It's that's where I do get the Alex Smith comparison, because Alex Smith used to always say the right thing, and now it hasn't, been anywhere near as bad for Trey Lance as it was for Alex Smith, with Mike Nolan publicly questioning his toughness and all that BS, and Mike Singletary starting Troy Smith, and Mike Martz preferring JT O'Sullivan, and there was all kinds of BS going on for Alex Smith, but the consistency with both of them is that they, as people, are people you're trying to root for as they go through what they're going through. Yeah.
100%. MGM Productions says, "What's up, Vish? Can I get each of your offensive and defensive draft crush sleeper picks? Who you got tonight, Warriors or Kings?" That's a lot of questions, MGM Productions. That's like
that is
5 questions. How about who you got tonight, Warriors, Kings?
I mean, dude, we've seen this movie like over and over again. Warriors are going to win. They're probably going to win big. De'Aaron Fox, their defense is going to be suffocating. I'm not even a Warriors fan. Like, I'm a big LeBron fan, and the Warriors have been beaten up on LeBron too in the NBA Finals, so it's been frustrating. But we've seen this way too many times, Rob. Like, way too many times. Seen this movie before,
Yeah, Warriors struggle on the road, though. They have all season. They still got to play another one in Sacramento.
I know, but you saw how Andrew Wiggins looked. He looked great coming back after 2 months.
Yeah, he looked great up until he had that wide open shot at the end of game 1 and missed it. I'm just saying. Not saying. I'm just
Rob,
saying.
are you a light the beam guy? Is that what this is?
No, I'm a Thunder fan, so I have no
Thunder?
Yeah, I was a Sonics fan, and then when they moved, I just continued to be a Thunder fan.
Okay, so you have organizational upside and a lot of things looking forward to. I'm a Pistons fan.
Good Lord.
I know. Well, we do have draft busts for both the Kings and the Warriors, doing a great job running up and down the floor for us in Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. But yeah.
John watching on YouTube, "I'm tired of the narrative that Trey Lance hasn't been given a chance. He has. He just got injured every time they gave him a chance. Rookie year injury, year 2 injury. He did. I mean, he had a chance last year. But the question is, coming off of this injury, does he still deserve another chance? And I think what Trey Lance people are arguing is, yes, he absolutely does. And he certainly doesn't deserve to have his chance taken away by Sam friggin' Darnold."
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has ever said that he hasn't had a chance. I think people are just frustrated by the fact that he's gotten injured, and now all of a sudden it feels like that chance could be taken away by Sam Darnold. I don't think it's that he's not having a chance. I think it's exactly what you described, because I think people kind of feel like Sam Darnold is what he is. He's been given innumerable chances with both the Jets and the Panthers to prove he's something different, and he hasn't been able to yet. Trey Lance hasn't proven to us he is one or the other yet.
Right.
And I think that's why people don't want Sam Darnold to come in and squeak that chance, because there's no upside in people's opinion to Sam Darnold. Now, the 49ers seem to think differently, because you hear Kyle Shanahan talk about Sam Darnold, you would think he's describing Tom Brady. But yeah, I do think that's the frustration.
Nick Eller says, "What's the first rumor out of OTAs? Darnold looks good or Trey?" It can't be. It better not be Darnold looks good. Vish, I was looking at the numbers this morning because this Darnold narrative continues to drive me absolutely crazy. The quote unquote 6 games that everyone keeps pointing to.
Yeah, he didn't do much.
One of the games he was 5 of 15 for 43 yards with 2 picks.
They won though. Quarterback wins. They won. Quarterback wins.
They scored a defensive touchdown in the game, and that's how they won. But in those 6 games, the Panthers ran for 888 yards if you take away Darnold's rushing contributions. That's basically 4.7 yards per carry. They averaged 31 carries per game. Guess what, 49ers? Any quarterback would look good when you rush for those kind of numbers. So using those 6 games as evidence of what Sam Darnold could look like or how he's somehow improved is batshit crazy. It just is.
the only evidence you can really use is the stretch he had when he came back from injury his rookie year. And that was the time he played with Jeremy Bates, who was a Mike Shanahan disciple. And that's the only stretch of really good football he's played in his career, in my opinion. Like that stretch in his rookie year, he looked like, okay, maybe the Jets drafted a guy. Then the second year, he got mono, and it was pretty terrible. That was the C ghost year with Adam Gase. The third year, the pandemic year, was terrible too. And then he goes to the Panthers. They start 3-0. He didn't play that well, but everybody was like, Sam Darnold, Sam Darnold. See, I told you about Sam Darnold. Then he didn't play well. Then they had the entire thing with Baker, whatever. But I think Sign Me Too 9 makes the point in the comment section. He is a lot like the quarterback that just left town. He is. His skill set, now he's bigger than the quarterback that just left town. He's more athletic than the quarterback just left town. He has a greater physical skill set, and he has an ability to make playoff schedule. But when you look at his game in terms of the fact that he doesn't process exceptionally well, he has a strong arm, but he's not consistently accurate throwing the ball deep and outside the numbers, which is this. And he, shortened up his delivery. He used to have that really loopy motion at USC where he dipped the ball way below his waist and he had that full windup. He's now shortened up his motion completely. He's got a very quick release too, and he's pretty accurate, short, intermediate over the middle of the field. I think that's why people think, and I think he has a chance of having success.
No, he doesn't. Stop
with
it.
The Niners, yes, I do. I do think he has a chance of having success with the Niners. I do. Now, I wouldn't want to see him hit the field before Trey Lance. Let me make that clear. I've been clear about that the entire offseason.
Right.
If Brock Purdy's not healthy, just play Trey Lance. I don't want to see Sam Darnold. But I'm not. I do think Sam Darnold could be successful with the 49ers.
I think Sam Darnold stinks. I think he's going to get worked from God's eye to the red fork, to quote Game of Thrones for you. All day, every day, Kim says Trey hasn't had a chance with the full offense and the same offense as Brock and Jimmy. That's true. Never started a game with Christian McCaffrey. And George Kittle, I think, has only played in one of Trey Lance's games, so he hasn't quite had the same weapons around him. Now, it doesn't totally excuse everything that we saw, but it is a little different. I mean, we saw a huge change in the offense when Christian McCaffrey arrived. That's undeniable.
100%. He changed everything. There's no doubt about that. To be fair, though, a lot of people who played for the 49ers didn't get a chance to play with the full offense. Even Brock Purdy had Deebo Samuel only for like 3 games because the Niners' weapons just tend to get hurt, right? Like I like even Nick Mullins, for example. Nick Mullins put up all those yards, all those stats. He never got to play with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, all healthy. He had a stretch in 2020 where he did it. They had the big game against the Rams, and then they came against Washington, and Deebo Samuel gets hurt on the first play of the game. He pulls his hamstring on an end around. So, like, it's kind of the case with all the Niners quarterbacks in general.
The one thing I will say, and this is the other thing that scares me about Darnold, as John B says, Trey will beat out Sam blindfold. Let's be serious. Jimmy, Trey, Brock last year. The one thing they all did really well, better than any 49ers quarterback has done in the Shanahan era, is protect the football. They did not give the football away. It's why the 49ers had the best turnover differential in the sport last year. That was a huge change from the quarterbacks of the Shanahan era in the past, including Jimmy.
With Jimmy especially.
Yes. Yeah. And that is massive for this team, especially with a defense as good as you have. That's what scares me about Darnold, because I keep saying it. I know people are probably tired of it by now. 90 career interceptions and fumbles in 56 career games. He doesn't take care of the football. The only time he did, this mythical 6-game stretch, the Panthers were running it 40 times a game.
I think that's the idea for people in San Francisco too, right?
What, don't let him throw it?
Well, no, but you put structure around him. I mean, Alex Smith had how many turnovers in his first 7 years or 6 years in San Francisco, and then Jim Harbaugh comes, and you take the game completely out of the quarterback's hands, and you have him fit a role within the particular offense. And what did he throw? He had 17 picks, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks in 2011.
Maybe, but 5 picks with limited throws is actually kind of a lot, don't you think? If they're not letting you throw
5 picks in 17 games, it's pretty good.
But but how often are you throwing? Like, what was his interception percentage?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Well,
it's not something that's stuck in my head. Yeah, unfortunately.
The point is that
I agree with your point, though. I do agree with it. I'm just saying that it's. I'm not ready to write off. Oh gosh, that's harsh. Jeez.
Big Cheese says my head is shaped like a football. For the record, it absolutely is. Continue.
Yeah, that's hilarious, but that's also kind of harsh. Come on, people. Jeez, take it easy on my man Rob here. But I agree with you, and like I let me make this clear because like as many times as I can say it, people just don't seem to think I say it. Like I do not think Trey Lance should be benched for Sam Darnold to start at any point, any amount of time this season. Like, if Brock Purdy's not starting, let's find out what we have with Trey Lance. That's been my consistent messaging throughout the offseason. But I'm not exactly unopposed to this idea that Darnold could resurrect aspects of his career and play well because it doesn't take a lot. I mean, we're talking about how many different offense. The scheme is really good. The line is really good. The defense is really good. They don't put anywhere near as much on the quarterback. And the mythical 6-game stretch that you're talking about that he played, okay. They didn't put anything on the quarterback as well. So it's pretty similar from that standpoint. But
But
yeah,
like,
gosh.
what are we saying here? If we don't let you throw it and we stack the defense and team around you, you could be pretty good. Like, gee, you
Well, I
think
mean,
like
that's why they're paying him $4 million, right?
they shouldn't even be paying him $1 million. He's terrible. How about sign me too on Twitch? We
Jeez.
haven't gotten any of Vish's dad's thoughts today. Yeah, come on. What do we got here?
My
We
dad's
need
been a
to.
little bit quiet on the football front.
That's not
I've got to
good.
see what he's talking about. Yeah, 100%.
One more thing I want to get to, because I saw an article in The Athletic about this, and it was basically, I think it was by Matt Barrows, who pointed out that the 49ers are doing a lot of work, Vish, when it comes to the quarterback. They're studying a lot of people, they're talking with a lot of people. I know that one guy that has gotten a lot of attention from the 49ers is Dorian Thompson Robinson, as I see a tweet from Steph Sanchez here points out he's visiting the 49ers at the facility. They've done a private workout with Dorian Thompson Robinson. The 49ers are sniffing around a lot of quarterbacks. They already have 3. What does this say to you?
Oh, yeah. So this is perfect. This is a great segue because now we can answer one of MGM Productions' many questions. Under the radar draft crush for me is Dorian Thompson Robinson, the quarterback from UCLA. Now, I think all this means is I think the 49ers should and will draft a quarterback. I think they should. Bill Walsh used to say you should draft a quarterback every year.
Every year.
I very much align. I think that philosophy makes sense. Like if you drafted Purdy once, why not take the chance at drafting Purdy again? Like why not? Like if you can just draft him and see just to keep developing these quarterbacks. I mean, Philadelphia has taken that philosophy, right? They drafted Jalen Hurts a year into paying Carson Wentz one of the biggest contracts in NFL history at the time. So they've also established that they like that. And obviously, the Niners have had a myriad of quarterback injuries in the last 7 years. So it would make sense, especially with one quarterback returning from injury. He's about to be cleared for this offseason. The other one going into the offseason with the entire injury. Sam Darnold, doesn't exactly have a clean bill of health in his career.
Mm-hmm.
He's never finished a season. He's gotten hurt in every single season he's played, withstanding 2020 or 2019 when he had mono. That's the only season he didn't get hurt. But he still missed 3 games with mono. So
another reason to sign him and pay him $4 million. Awesome job. Continue.
So, yeah, I think that the 49ers, if they're going to take a quarterback, like I want them to take a guy with starter upside. And if we're looking at the end of the draft, this is the one guy to me with real starter upside. He's got a great arm. He's a good athlete. He's a little frail. He's very slim, but he's got a quick delivery. He's very accurate, short, intermediate. He's played a lot of football. Like I know there's the Jake Haener, Brock Purdy comparisons, and I kind of get them to an extent. I think DTR has a better chance of being this year's Brock Purdy than Jake Haener because I think there's a limitation in Jake Haener's game in terms of his athleticism. That's the underrated part of the entire Brock Purdy equation, that Brock Purdy's actually quick, and he's got like foot quickness even by NFL standards in terms of being able to run away from people. Jake Haener looks like he's running in quicksand, and he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Like he plays quarterback beautifully. He makes a lot of great throws, but Jesse thinks Lance is younger than DTR. Yeah, I think they're both 23. I think DTR is coming out of 23. I mean, Purdy was older than Lance.
Trey Lance is drafted in 2021, and he's still younger than rookies that are coming into the league.
You funnily enough, you know who they used to say this about also every single
Alex
year?
Smith.
No, the guy who was the youngest guy to start in NFL history.
Darnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still
Joe Burrow. Remember that? Joe Burrow's older than Sam Darnold. Do you remember that?
Yeah. By the way, I'm just pulling up this article from Barrows. Jake Hayner was one of the quarterbacks that the 49ers have worked out with. Tanner McKee was another one. Also, there was one more from Purdue, which I can't remember the name of, but it's in this article as well. Adrian O'Connell.
Yeah. I know
Aiden O'Connell, excuse me. Aiden. So, like, they're studying up a lot. Now, real quick before we go here, a lot of people are saying if the 49ers draft a quarterback, that means Trey Lance is getting traded. I don't believe that.
No.
There is a huge day coming up for the Niners, June 10th, give or take. That's going to be the 3-month mark for Purdy after the surgery. That is when he's supposed to be scheduled to throw a football. Can he throw a football? If he can, how does his arm feel afterwards? All of that stuff we're going to find out in that time. So if the 49ers draft a quarterback, I think it's because they're saying, hey, we may not have Purdy for a little while. If we don't, I think the Niners are going to carry 3 quarterbacks. So I think that they would carry one of these guys that they draft. So that's why I don't necessarily say, oh, if they draft a guy, Trey's definitely gone.
Yeah, and I would love for them to have another guy developing in the background too. They go through these quarterbacks pretty quickly. They seem to fall out of love with these quarterbacks pretty quickly. Like, it's quick in terms of how they fall out of love with these quarterbacks. I would love for them to have a third guy that they're developing in the background, especially because Darnold's deal is a 1-year deal. So let's just pretend that Darnold's just here to be the third string quarterback. That's a very temporary 1-year deal thing.
Right.
I'm not sure you want to keep bringing him back for $4.5 million guaranteed year after
Hell
year.
No.
Rob Guerrera might have a brain aneurysm if that happens.
It's very possible.
I didn't know that you hated Sam Darnold this much.
I definitely do. Not as a person, just as a player. I'm sure he's a perfectly fine human being who gives to charity, hugs puppies, and all sorts of stuff. But I don't want him on my team as a quarterback. D'Angelo Evans on YouTube says the Niners want to draft a quarterback and release Darnold after camp. They're not going to release Darnold after camp. He makes too much money. Like, I thought
this narrative just doesn't make sense to me. I've seen this one pushed around a lot. I know I pushed back against it with Nate Sudfeld because of the $2.5 million he got guaranteed. Sam Darnold got double that. He got 4.5. And Sam Darnold is carrying, let me repeat this. Sam Darnold in 2023 is carrying the 13th highest cap hit on the San Francisco 49ers. The 13th highest cap hit. He has a higher cap hit than Brandon Ayuk. He's carrying the 13th highest cap hit on the San Francisco 49ers. Would be a incredible financial decision to cut him.
That is wild. But then people are trying to tell me that he's only a third string quarterback. Like, that's right. Those two things don't go hand in hand.
And then the incentives they have around him. I think, look, there's a good chance he plays zero football for the 49ers as a starter. Like, it could be just the Trey Lance, Brock Purdy show, which I hope it is.
Yep.
But and if I'm wrong, D'Angelo Evans, you get to dunk on me, and we get to shout your praises for a couple Mondays. But I can't see how he's not on the roster in 2023. The contract they gave him, to me, with the incentives, all of that, guaranteed him a roster spot.
I agree. Absolutely. You don't go out and sign somebody on the first day of the legal tampering period, or at least agree to a contract on the first day of the legal tampering period, and then just cut him before even. Like, that's
Malcolm Smith.
Oh, man. It is weird that
he did survive 2 years without playing, though.
Crabtree, Richard Sherman, and Malcolm Smith, all 3 guys involved in that play at the end of the NFC Championship game, all ended up playing for the 49ers. That is such a weird thing to me that it still rattles around in my brain somehow. But anyway, this episode where we weren't supposed to talk about quarterbacks at all turned into a complete quarterback episode. Blame the Philadelphia Eagles, or you could blame me, as Vish said earlier.
I'm blaming you.
Okay, I'll put it on my shoulders. That's fine. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Please rate, review, and follow the Niners Nation pod, or the force I have it there. Follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network, please, and like and subscribe to the YouTube page. It will really, really help us out a lot as we're trying to build this thing up. We are getting closer and closer to the draft. Vish has his rankings out, which you tweeted out the other day. If you want to check those out, at Vish Kumaran, they're very official.
I don't know if that was a mistake. Usually I don't necessarily do the rankings thing, because like, I mean, there's ones that are obvious, right? Like Joe Burrow was clearly the best quarterback, like Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young this year. But like once you get to ranking guys like that are ranked, like 3 or 4 for some people or 4 or 5 for some people, it becomes just a matter of preference.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're trying to accurately, rank them, your preference really it becomes very subjective. And now I don't know if I should have put it out there because like I know a lot of my draft misses that like just like I just kind of see through the grapevines with those. But now that I put it out, like not the world because I'm not that big, but a few other people now know what are going to inevitably be many draft misses in 2023 because that's just what happens in every draft.
There you go. Old takes exposed is coming for Vish. By the way, just as real quick, this is just general NFL news. Bryce Young has canceled all the rest of his pre-draft visits. So do with that, make of that what you will. Is that a sign that he knows he's going first overall? Who knows? But that is a thing that happened.
That's who I would take. Now, I didn't think they traded up for him just because who needs Chris Sims rankings when you have? I mean, my rankings are way less controversial than his. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well,
but he's definitely got a way better process and knows way more football than me. So there's probably a lot more analytical reasons behind his rankings than mine.
Careful saying that. His name is Mud among 49er fans. It shouldn't be, but it is. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. I hope everybody has a good rest of your day. We'll be back next week. We'll be back. I will have, by the way, an interview with Mike Greenberg, who's going to be hosting the draft. I sat down with him last week. That's going to come out this week. It'll be on the YouTube page. You can download the podcast. So we'll try and get more and more big names in here.
Wow. I did see somebody was requesting Mike Silver.
Yes, I'll try to get that too.
You start that. I would love to get Mike Silver on here with you and I. I would love to talk to Mike Silver. Hash out our differences.
All right. Let's do it.
I don't even know if those differences exist, but we did go head to head in the bracket thing that you created.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. I'll try and hook that up for next week. We'll see.
Oh, look at that.
There you go. See, ask and you shall receive. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you next week.